Good morning, students. Our today's topic is electrocardiograph, that is ECG. ECG is a graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. So, ECG represents in the graphical form the electrical activity of the heart. The machine which is used to obtain is known as electrocardiograph, and it is used to obtain a graph which is known as electrocardiogram. In the figure 18.3 in your book, P represents the excitation of the atria or the contraction of the atrium, or known as depolarization of atria. The P represents the atrial systole when the auricles contract. This P curve shows when the auricles contract. QRS shows when the ventricles contract, that is the depolarization of the ventricles. And T represents when they are in the resting stage, that is joint diastole stage. So this PQRST is the graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart. A patient is connected to the machine with 3 electrical leads, one to each wrist and the left ankle. These leads monitor the heart activity. For a detailed evaluation of the heart's function, multiple leads are attached to the chest region. Here we will talk only about a standard ECG. Each peak in the ECG is identified with a letter from P to T that corresponds to a specific electrical activity of the heart. The P wave represents the electrical excitation of the atria, that or depolarization, that is when the systole occurs in the atria, which leads to the contraction of both the atria. The QRS complex represents the depolarization of ventricles, that is the contraction of the ventricles or the systole of the ventricle, which initiates the ventricular contraction. The contraction starts shortly after Q and marks the beginning of the systole, ventricular systole. The T wave represents the return of the ventricles from excited to normal state, that is repolarization. The end of the T wave marks the end of the systole. Obviously, by counting the number of QRS complexes that occur in a given time period, one can determine the heartbeat rate of an individual. How many QRS, these type of peaks are present in 1 minute in the graph, then we can calculate the heartbeat of that person. Since the ECGs obtained from different individuals have roughly the same shape for a given lead configuration, any deviation from this shape indicates a possible abnormality or disease. Hence, it is of great clinical significance. Double circulation. The blood flows strictly by a fixed route through blood vessels, the arteries and veins. Basically, each artery and vein consist of 3 layers. The artery or vein consists of 3 layers. The inner one is known as tunica intima, the middle one is known as tunica media, and the outer one is known as tunica externa. Tunica intima is made up of squamous endothelium. Tunica media is made up of smooth muscles, and tunica externa is made up of fibrous connective tissue with collagen fibers. Collagen fibers means white flexible fibers are present. The tunica media is comparatively thin in the veins. As mentioned earlier, the blood pumped by the right ventricle enters the pulmonary artery, whereas the left ventricle pumps blood into the aorta. The deoxygenated blood pumped into the pulmonary artery is passed to the lungs, from where the oxygenated blood is carried by the pulmonary veins into the left atrium. This pathway constitutes the pulmonary circulation. From right ventricle, the blood goes through pulmonary artery to the lungs, and from there the oxygenated blood comes by pulmonary vein into the left atrium. This is known as pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary is related to lungs. The oxygenated blood enters the aorta, is carried by a network of arteries, arterioles, and capillaries to the tissues, from where the deoxygenated blood is collected by a system of venules, veins, and vena cavas and emptied into the right atrium. This is called systemic circulation. So, in systemic circulation, the blood moves through aorta, then aorta divides further into arteries, arterioles, and they supply blood to the tissue region. From there, venules combines to form veins, and then they combines to form vena cavas and open into the right atrium. This is known as systemic circulation. The systemic circulation provides nutrients, oxygen, and other essential substances to the tissues and takes carbon dioxide and other harmful substances away for elimination. A unique vascular connection exists between the digestive tract and liver called hepatic portal system. So, the hepatic portal vein carries blood from intestine to the liver before it is delivered to the systemic circulation, before it enters into the vena cavas, so that the blood can go into the right atrium. From the intestine, the blood first goes to the liver and then to the through vena cavas to the right atrium. A special coronary system of blood vessels is present in our body exclusively for the circulation of blood to and from the cardiac musculature. Coronary system means for the heart. So special blood vessels are present which supply blood to the muscles of the heart. Next is regulation of cardiac activity. Normal activities of the heart are regulated intrinsically, that is auto-regulated by specialized muscles called nodal tissue. Hence the heart is called myogenic. So in the heart, nodal tissue is present that we have already discussed. SAN, AVN bundles are, so all these are present. They are auto-regulated, that is no external stimulus is required for the starting of the impulse. They are auto-regulated. Therefore, the heart is called myogenic. That is, their heart is under the control of nodal tissues or specialized muscles. A special neural center in the medulla oblongata can moderate the cardiac functions through autonomous nervous system. In the medulla oblongata also some nervous tissue is present, that is autonomous nervous system is present, which regulates the cardiac activities, some cardiac functions, heart functions. Neural signals through the sympathetic nerves, part of the ANS, can increase the rate of heartbeat. Autonomous nervous system can be of two types, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So sympathetic nerve increases the rate of heartbeat. The strength of ventricular contraction and thereby the cardiac output. So sympathetic nervous system increases the heart rate, increase the strength of ventricular contraction, and hence increases the cardiac output. On the other hand, parasympathetic neural signals, because autonomic nervous system has two parts, sympathetic and parasympathetic, and both work opposite to each other. If sympathetic help in increasing in the rate of heartbeat, parasympathetic will decrease the rate of heartbeat, speed the conduction of action potential, and thereby the cardiac. So parasympathetic decreases the rate of heartbeat. Again, the adrenal medullary hormones, the adrenal gland, in the adrenal gland medulla part is there, which secrete adrenaline hormone. So this hormone can also increase the cardiac output, cardiac activity. Next is disorders of circulatory system. First is high blood pressure, that is hypertension. Hypertension is the term for blood pressure that is higher than the normal. Our normal blood pressure of a human being is 120 by 80 mm of mercury. In this measurement, 120 mm of mercury is the systolic or pumping pressure, and 80 mm of mercury is a diastolic or resting pressure. If repeated checks of blood pressure of an individual is 140 by 90 or higher, it shows hypertension. So if a person's blood pressure is more than 140 by 90, when we measure many times, so it is the condition of hypertension. Hypertension, high blood pressure leads to heart diseases and also affects vital organs like brain and kidney. Next is coronary artery disease, CAD. Coronary artery disease, often referred to as atherosclerosis. It affects the vessels that supply blood to the heart muscle. It is caused by the deposit of calcium, fat, cholesterol, and fibrous tissue, which makes the lumen of arteries narrower. In the inner side of arteries, sometimes the deposit of cholesterol, calcium, or fats occur, which reduces the lumen cavity of the artery. So this condition is known as CAD, coronary artery disease. In this, the blood can't flow properly. Next is angina. It is also called angina pectoris. A symptom of acute chest pain appears when no enough oxygen is reaching the heart muscles. So in angina, acute pain occurs, acute chest pain occurs to the person. Angina can occur in men and women of any age, but it is more common among the middle-aged and elderly. It occurs due to conditions that affect the blood flow. Because blood is not flowing properly, the muscles can't get the oxygen properly, so chest pain occurs. This condition is known as angina. Heart failure. Heart failure means the state of heart when it is not pumping blood effectively enough to meet the needs of the body. It is sometimes called congestive heart failure because congestion of lungs is one of the main symptoms of the disease. When the congestion in the lungs occur, the lungs will not provide sufficient oxygen to the heart, so this condition may cause heart failure. Heart failure is not same as cardiac arrest. In the cardiac arrest, the heart stops beating. In the cardiac arrest, the heart stops beating, it will not pump blood. Nor the heart attack. In the heart attack, when the heart muscle is suddenly damaged by an inadequate blood supply. In the heart attack, the heart muscles are not getting sufficient blood supply, sufficient oxygen. So this condition is heart attack. And when the heart stops beating, it is cardiac arrest. I hope this is clear. Thank you.